Hello friends, I welcome you to the week 10. In this week, in this present module, we would cover Introduction to Corpus Linguistics for Legal Evidence. Why large-scale language patterns strengthen truth speaking. To that effect, we will also understand what is corpus linguistics. Let's understand this in this way. Corpus linguistics looks at how people really speak and write in daily life. That is applicable to everyone. Corpus linguists uses this large amount of real language data in the courtroom, in the legal sphere. This helps us see whether a statement sounds natural or has been coached or tutored. Instead of relying on gut feeling, we need to understand how corpus linguists proves the facts in the real courtroom. Corpus linguistics studies the language, the real language used by the real people. In courts, it helps tell the genuine speech from manufactured statements, and therefore this module would help you to understand the significance of corpus linguistics. Friends, we must understand that in this today's world, the language has become data. Today we enter a domain that feels technical at first, but it becomes one of the most powerful tools for modern forensic linguistics. Corpus linguistics allows us to go beyond intuition, examine the language using evidence-based patterns. Every sentence, every phrase, every hesitation becomes quantifiable. When we analyze language at scale, the truth becomes clearer, sharper, and more objective. Then the question comes, what exactly is forensic corpus? Now, this term requires a very specific understanding. A forensic corpus means body. In criminal law, most of the times you must have heard the phrase corpus delicti, body of the crime. A forensic corpus is simply a large, organized collection of texts relevant to legal investigation. Now, we know that during investigation, several textual, literature, writings, statements are recorded, and then they become part of courtroom proceedings. But if we apply in our day-to-day life scenario, it may entail WhatsApp chats, threat notes, suicidal letters, witness statements, helpline calls, ransom messages, courtroom transcripts, or social media posts. By comparing a question text with larger database, we can identify patterns of authorship, the intention behind those words, either written or verbal, the dialect of the person, deception, undue influence, coercion, these kind of elements, mental elements, emotional state of the speaker or the author, and how overall consistency is maintained. Therefore, a corpus, since it's a larger database, it helps the investigators, it helps the law enforcement agencies like a linguistic microscope by which you can study the overall persona of the person. Friends, now we understand why corpus linguistic matters in law and justice, or may I say in criminal justice system. In courtrooms, the intuition alone cannot survive cross-examination, because we know that cross-examination is an essential part of the criminal trial. or in a case, the cross-examination offers the judge or the court an opportunity to deduce or identify or purify the truth. And therefore, in courts, the judges demand evidence, or we can say a stricter degree of evidence. And therefore, when both the lawyers, be it prosecution or defense lawyer, they demand reliability, they question each other, witnesses are thoroughly examined. We know that examination in chief, cross-examination or re-examination, everywhere the questions are posed and a person is required to give answer. And there, if you just analyze the process, the questions may be in leading question form, it may be scandalous question. There are many things that make the witness give the reply by his own intellect, no matter how much preparation he has done before appearing before the court. Those questions reveal his true intent, his own version of truth that he wants to depose before the court. Therefore, when we show that the suspect or accused person's vocabulary, his spelling patterns, his habit of using phrases, peculiar linguistic marks that he leaves while speaking or writing, sentence structures, or idiomatic usage that may match or may not match with the question document. The analysis gains scientific grounding because of all this. Let us take an example. In most common parlance in day-to-day life, a person usually texts in such a way that in Hindi, he might say, "हाँ मैं आ रहा हूँ." That means, yes, I'm coming. But suddenly, now his language has changed and the text message appears to be, "I hereby inform you that I shall arrive shortly." Now here, if you understand how the pattern has changed, how he has changed the tone dramatically, suddenly, from informal to highly formal text. This is shockingly formal, and therefore, corpus data shows such formal language that is very rare in day-to-day life. We don't use such sentences in our day-to-day life. So, corpus linguistics helps by putting forward before the court this sharp contrast of language that a person may use or may not use. And that creates a doubt about the authorship, and that gives rise to more thorough forensic scrutiny or examination. Now let's understand how Corpora strengthens the authorship analysis. Friends, authorship identification becomes significantly more reliable when we compare a question document with a database of known writing samples. We know that there are provisions in Bharatiya Saksha Adhiniyam 2023 or in erstwhile Indian Evidence Act 1872 that even in the courtroom, the judge is empowered to ask the person write into the handwriting, and that may be matched. So if a person consistently uses rare kind of collocations like "deep respectfully yours," or repeatedly omits article and always spells because as because, BECOZ. Now we know that this is a social media language in which users tend to use the short forms. They may change the spelling by their own unique style, or sometimes they try to follow the trend. So here this idiosyncrasis becomes linguistic fingerprint. A corpus helps quantify these fingerprints and detect who is most likely to have written this document. Friends, remember, a person may change his clothes, but he can rarely change how he writes or speaks. Corpus linguistics catches these unconscious habits and uses data to show to the court through scientific ways that who most likely wrote this document. Here corpus linguistics underlines just like a fingerprint, but fingerprint of words. Now let's understand how corpus methods make the deception visible. We know that deception means it's an alteration of language, either spoken or verbal. It increases the cognitive load, which reduces the sentence length, increases disfluency, and sometimes even changes the pronoun usage. And therefore, a corpus lets us observe these shifts precisely. For example, deceptive statements may use fewer self-references, more distancing language, or overuse of intensifiers like actually, frankly, honestly, to be honestly, to tell you the truth. Or sometimes we know that some people have the habit to say this phrase, for your kind information. If you just pick their sentences, their statements, plenty of times here and there they will use this phrase, for your kind information. So this way a corpus shows these patterns, not so isolated words, but these are the recurring behaviors of the person. Now let's understand how studying hate speech, harassment, or these kind of cases through linguistic corpora. Now we know that hate speech are sensitive cases in which the language has played a very crucial role that may give rise to the violence or unrest, or that might breach the tranquility in the society. And therefore, the courts are increasingly relying on corpus methods to examine hate speeches. A corpus can reveal whether a phrase is genuinely abusive, culturally contextual, or just innocently idiomatic. It can show how frequently a man uses a word or a phrase or a term by what kind of cut. It can show how frequently a term appears in violent contexts, or whether an accused uses similar expressions consistently. We know that a person may use certain kind of words as a habit without any intention, mechanically. This helps the court avoid misinterpretations and ensure fairness in cases involving caste-based harassment, communal hate, or online abuse. Let's take a practical example. If you see the language of an FIR, first information report, suppose the FIR record shows that the accused has said following sentence: you people are like this only. Now if you just see the FIR records and various online speeches, that shows that whether this phrase usually appears in caste-based harassment cases or not, or are these just ordinary arguments. That comparison shows it helps the court avoid over-criminalization or under-protection in both ways. A corpus linguistics helps court test the FIR language against how similar words are actually used across India. So here, corpus linguistics, through its methodologies, help the court to understand the intent behind the speaker, because hate speeches, we know that after all, you are using innuendo, sometimes you are using the same day-to-day language, but that hidden intent that is imbibed in those words may trigger violence, or that may give rise to the violent behavior or antisocial elements. Now let's understand how corpus can also help in mapping testimonial consistency. Friends, in the domain of evidence, consistency plays a very vital role. A person may give statements at the beginning stages of investigation, and then when he appears before the court, his examination will be taken, and he has to narrate what he has narrated to the law enforcement agencies or to the investigating officers. Now he has to depose that before the court in the trial, and there requires consistency. Or you may take an example of dying declarations. We know that in the domain of evidence, multiple dying declarations are quite possible, but all you need to see is consistency, how much omissions, alterations, additions are there, and because of all this, the sharp contradictions can be brought before the court to impeach the veracity or creditworthiness of a particular witness. When multiple witnesses narrate an event, their statements naturally differ. No matter a single event is witnessed by plenty of people, now they have become the witness, but everyone will narrate his own version with his own unique vocabulary. And therefore, certain patterns are unnatural repetition. If you just tutor that particular witness, he will repeat certain things, or all these witnesses will repeat certain phrases which they might not use in their day-to-day language or day-to-day usage of words. A corpus makes these patterns more visible. It highlights how that particular phrase is common in everyone's statement. It reveals whether the witness speaks by their own natural discourse, their own volition, or they are mimicking each other, or they have been tutored, they have made rehearsal to speak the same language in order to avoid further complications. Friends, you can take the example of Chinese whisper, a game in which a message has to be passed through each other by whispering in their ears. And most commonly, whatever the first person has spoken or whispered in the ear of next person, that things gets changed. And when the last person, he receives that particular message, it goes through substantial changes. So this is common human nature. If 5 people repeat the exact same sentence with the same unusual words, then we can definitely say that it is not a natural connotation. It is not a natural expression. Hence, if you see that the real life situation, for example, normally people describe events differently. One person may say he ran away. The other person may say he just escaped. But when multiple witnesses repeat the same unusual words and sentence structure, a corpus flags it is an unnatural, shocking similarity, and that may give rise to the doubt of tutoredness. Let's take a case example, how corpus analysis is used in a high-profile threat case. In a well-documented anonymized case, a threatening email was linked to a suspect through corpus comparison. The key evidence was not a single word, but a cluster of rare patterns, in which you may find unusual hyphenations, a specific way of apologizing before threatening, and a preference for certain connectors. Let's take an example. An anonymous threatening email contains following statements: I am sorry to disturb you, but you are advised not to ignore this matter, fail in which you will face the consequences. Now here, if you just decode this particular message, when the police or investigating authorities try to check the suspect's old emails, WhatsApp messages, they found the same habits. That I am sorry to disturb, that means he is apologizing at the beginning, followed by a warning that fail in which you will face consequences. So this is a pattern: apology and then threat. It wasn't just one instance, everywhere he is using the same pattern. So this repeated style that connects the message to the suspect, to the originator. This can be again useful to identify the people. Or sometimes we know that in email, people tend to write certain words, please do the needful, or sorry to say. So these kind of words make a unique style of the originator, and that can be identified through the way of forensic linguists. Let's take another example, analyzing WhatsApp chats in a financial fraud investigation. In a large financial fraud inquiry, WhatsApp chats were compared with suspect messages to determine authorship. Let's take an example. Anonymous WhatsApp message. The message says, a very short message: transferred today, check the account, ... call later. These three small sentences: transferred today, check the account, call later. Now if you just compare these particular sentences used by the suspect in his earlier WhatsApp messages, you may come across these kind of short forming of sentences. For example, reached office, meeting on, update soon, or sent files, review please. So here the corpus shows that the same habit. The sentence is missing with the subject, I have, or this may be. These words are omitted. Shortened verbs and messages ending with 2 dots appearing again and again. These things can link the message to the author or to the writer. These features appeared in fraudulent messages as well as establishing the authorship alignment. And therefore, the corpus provides statistically defensible evidence. So friends, while we are analyzing these things, you can also contribute the system by building your own mini corpus using everyday tools. This is quite doable. For that, you don't need sophisticated or expensive softwares to build this kind of corpora. Students and investigators can build mini corpora using simple text files organized by themes: threat corpus, apology corpus, ransom corpus, request corpus, a loan dispute corpus. Over the time, these database or data sets can help sharpen your intuition, improve investigative accuracy, and provide reliable analytical reference frame. Now ultimately, let's try to understand ethical care in corpus building. Because friends, the privacy, consent, or sensitive matters requires confidentiality. Therefore, corpus linguist demands ethical responsibility as well. Many texts contain personal, emotional, or traumatized voices. Investigators must remove identifying details, protect the privacy of the speaker, and ensure that sensitive documents are handled with utmost respect. We must remember that the best corpus practice honors both science and humanity. Let's not forget the human aspect of the procedure. Friends, in today's era of artificial intelligence, how this corpora and predictive analysis can help the courts? Let's have a look on this. AI and NLPs, that is natural language processing, there are tools available for this. These are now allowing linguists to analyze millions of texts in a minute, because with the help of the artificial intelligence, it saves time, it brings more accuracy, it is more prone to meticulous analysis without much human intervention. Therefore, you can bypass certain cognitive biases. This tool detects patterns previously invisible. They map the radicalization. They also help identifying coordinated misinformation and track linguistic evolution across platforms. As forensic linguistics grows, corpus methods will become central to the justice system worldwide if it is managed in an ethical and legal way. So friends, thank you for the beginning of this 10th week with an open mind. This particular week will change how you see the language forever. Corpus linguist transforms language into measurable evidence. It deepens your intuition, expands your analytical toolkit, and empowers you to see the patterns where others see chaos. And therefore, in the next video, we will begin designing a forensic corpus from scratch so that you can experience this transformation in first-hand way. Thank you very much.